Hi, chat and people on the replay crew. We are going to be looking at the story, and now we have a not guilty verdict for Terrence Shannon Jr. Now, this story, Arbiko put it on my radar, so if you see Arbiko in the chat or if you're watching this on replay, show Arbiko some love. That's R space B-I-K-O. We're going to try to put the pieces together of this trial. There weren't full trial streams available for this, or if there were, they were pulled after they were completed, right? As soon as the stream ended. So as we go through this, we're going to be putting together clips from news stations, and we're going to be looking at tweets from live in the court from a court reporter. And we're going to piece together what happened in this 3-day trial against Terrence Shannon Jr., who was accused, falsely accused, provably so, and the jury agreed, of grape. So we're going to look at this. This is going to feel a little bit unusual because we have to piecemeal this together, but you're going to hear some crazy things. So excited to see you in here early. Michael Sanchez, Drea, good to see you. And Pam, I'm so glad you said this, that you can almost believe that the justice system will do anything. Yeah, it sure seems like that. And as we're rolling into this, as you guys file in, let me know if, where you live. Do you think your courts are accessible and transparent? Because some areas, we do have cameras in courtroom. We're watching with the Fulton County. We have the YSL trial fully streamed on TV. But if you're familiar with the Jonathan Majors trial, you remember we had to pull together a lot of money just to get court transcripts, which doesn't even give you the full picture of what happened in the courtroom. And already, it's so good to see you. So good to see you, Marcelechka. So I don't know if you know this case either. This one's going to be, it's a 3-day trial. He was found not guilty, but the fact it was even a trial at all is nuts, you guys. So I have this article here up from ESPN because he was a basketball player at Illinois. And as soon as he was accused, the university didn't like that. Without due process, they just said, oops, no more playing for you. So he was an all-star player, and that just completely flumped his career. I'm sure that's no surprise, right? That's kind of how it goes. But now that he's not guilty, that was all for nothing. Just crazy. So we're about to go through some news clips. They're all really short. There's only like 4 of them from a local news station, WCIA, which is a funny acronym. But it's going to give us a look at how the courtroom was set up, even though they don't have full trial days streamed. And then we're going to go switch to the written reporting on Twitter, on X. So let's switch over to here, make this full screen. And again, this is going to be chopped up just because that's how the reporting's going.
An important thing to know is Judge Amy Hanley decided to allow third-party evidence in the trial. It's a decision she made on Friday after both sides filed motions. The defense says video evidence shows Shannon was not the person next to the victim. The deputy district attorney responded, saying in part, quote, "The evidence in question would serve no legitimate evidentiary purpose at this trial aside from showing a third party's alleged propensity to commit criminal acts." As for what to expect the rest of the week, witnesses are due in court on Wednesday afternoon. Court records show officers and detectives from the Lawrence Police Department and KU Department are subpoenaed. So is a nurse from Lawrence Memorial Hospital. Evidence the Kansas Bureau of Investigations is holding will also be presented in court. For a full breakdown of all of the details in this case, visit WCIA.com. Reporting in the newsroom, Amanda Brennan, WCIA 3, your local news leader.
Amanda, thank you.
All right, so we're going to get over to a clip. And again, these are all just clips. This is what we've got to work with. We've got some clips of opening statements. It's not going to be in full, but you'll get a vibe of how everything sounds in the courtroom.
Samantha Foster representing the state of Kansas.
Oh, this one's fast. Hold on. Let me not put you through that double speed.
That's when Foster says the woman made eye contact with a guy who she thought was quote the J.
So they're giving some background on his basketball career. I skipped forward to where we start with the courtroom updates.
November 8th, 2023. From there, they got ready to go out and meet friends at the Jayhawk Cafe. It was crowded, and Foster says a friend bought her a vodka Red Bull single. She doesn't like the taste, carries it around, but gets overstimulated and decides it's time to go. As she and the friend are leaving, that's when Foster says the woman made eye contact with a guy who she thought was, quote, pretty cute. That's when Foster says the defendant waved the victim over. He helps her through the crowd. His hand goes to her right hip and drops it inappropriately, touching her. She was, quote, absolutely shocked. She and the friend leave, go home, and she searches rosters online. That's because she didn't know who it was, but recognized other athletes around in the area.
So, according to the prosecution's arguments, their opening statements, the accuser, and I've seen some of the videos, they blur out her name. The accuser thinks he's cute, goes over there, and then afterwards goes and searches for him on Instagram, looking through the player roster to find him. So that's interesting.
The Illinois basketball roster, and there's Mr. Shannon. She checks Instagram to double check herself, and she knows that that is the man who had waved her over and who inserted his fingers into the body.
Next, Foster explains the victim went to the Lawrence Police Department in the morning to make a report. She later went to Lawrence Memorial Hospital for a sexual assault exam. So the main argument from the other side, they say it was not Shannon. They say with his height and the position that they were standing, it couldn't have been him. And it wasn't caught on camera. Trisha Bath, Shannon's attorney, slamming the Lawrence Police Department as well, saying the detective did not go back to the Jayhawk Cafe to ask bouncers questions. She also alleges police didn't talk to Kansas basketball players who were in the same area that night until February. That's 5 months after the alleged rape happened. She says Justin Harmon and Deshaun Hobson were there the entire time, too. They're both with Illini basketball. She says the police have not talked to them. She says they did not see any of these alleged actions, and they will be in court this week. As for who the defense thinks committed the crime, it's an athlete who's been in trouble in the past. I have those details tonight at 6.
So they think that, the defense is positing a third-party culprit. And you heard in the first video that just before the trial was about to start, the judge, Amy, she said, all right, this third-party culprit evidence, it's allowed to come in. I'm going to allow it. I'm going to rule in favor and grant the defense's motion to introduce this evidence at trial. It wasn't, the prosecution was trying to fight that from coming in. Then you hear in this video that they don't even go and investigate the venue where it supposedly happened, where everything took place. They don't go talk to the staff that was working that night. They don't talk to other players that were also present that night. They just don't do it. They wait 5 months to speak to some of them. So where are you guys at right now? Do you think the investigation was good? Not good. Maybe it was lacking a little bit. Because I have questions. I certainly have questions. Now we're going to get into some of the testimony with the videos. And again, once we get over to the court reporting that's written, we'll get some more details than these video clips are showing. But this will give you an impression again of the people in the courtroom, the tone, a little bit of facial expressions from the judge. And it's also worth noting that judge, the original judge that was supposed to preside over the trial, a trial she was already sitting over, was going too long. So Judge Amy, the one that ends up granting this third-party evidence, this motion to let that come in, she was just appointed like 8 or 9 days ago, right before the trial started doing a jury selection. So maybe that would have been different if it was still the other judge. I don't know. But let's see here. How do we characterize, first witness testimony here? And again, I'm just going to the clips. Each of the beginning of these videos just talks about, the basketball history.
Started with 2 people testifying for the state. That includes the alleged victim's friend and Jennifer Hewitt with the Kansas Bureau of Investigations. Hewitt went through DNA evidence showing there was no male DNA in the woman's lower private areas. The friend walked through what she saw happen that night. Lawyers in the courtroom say that's when she explained she didn't see anything.
So prosecution, the 2 on the left there are with the DA's office. And then the 2 on the left are part of the defense team.
In relation to a rape, but she is claiming she saw Shannon grab the accuser's arm. Another detail, she went with her friend to the hospital the next morning. That was for the sexual assault exam. That night, 24 hours later, she said they both went back to the Jayhawk Cafe. Now, for the defense, multiple KU basketball players testified today. Hunter Dickinson was the first one. He says he was with Shannon all night and saw nothing. Kevin McCullough took to the stand as well. Yesterday, Shannon's lawyer said that he was with him the whole time, too. Lawyers say Justin Harmon and Deshaun Hobson were also expected to testify. They are with the Illinois basketball program. Reporting in the newsroom, Amanda Brennan, WCIA 3, your local news.
And we've got one more we're going to look at. Hold on, I messed up my stream, so let me present this struggle streamer. And this is going to be closing arguments. So it's going to feel awkward because it seems like we just jumped through this trial, but that's the video coverage that we've got. But now we're going to see a hint of the closing arguments, and we get great details also from ex post that we'll look at after.
You go back there, you weigh everything. You will convict Mr. Shannon as charged.
And the sound for him is really bad. It's not me, it's him, but it gets better when the defense speaks.
Please do your civic duty. Stop the madness. They have not proven any charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Sign the verdict form of not guilty on both so we can all go home.
And in the end, the jury sided with the former Illini star Terrence Shannon Jr. Today, he was found not guilty on 2 felony charges. Good evening. I'm Brendan Morano.
And I'm Jennifer Roscoe. Back in December, he was charged with rape after he visited a University of Kansas bar. This whole week, jurors have heard witness testimony from both sides. That continued this morning with U of I assistant coach Tim Anderson and the basketball player himself. WCIA3's Amanda Brennan is live in our newsroom. Amanda, what happened next?
Closing arguments started around 1 p.m. and from there, the jury deliberated for almost 2 hours. Next, words from the judge
I think it was 90 minutes specifically was deliberations for the jury to return this verdict. And when you see the extra details of the evidence, you're going to be shocked that it wasn't just like a walk in, walk out, not guilty verdict.
Up this case that we've been following for the past 6 months. In the next story, we've muted the victim and her friends' names from some of the quotes.
In the state of Kansas versus Terrence Shannon Jr., we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of rape. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of aggravated sexual battery.
Those were the words the former Illini and his legal team had been hoping for since he was charged in December. That following an incident at the Jayhawk Cafe in September of 2023 after Shannon went to the Illinois versus Kansas football game. An 18, now 19-year-old said he inappropriately touched her under her skirt that night. That accusation led to this week's trial and some intense closing arguments. Ricardo Leal, the assistant district attorney, went first. He called the victim a typical college student, but the defendant...
Mr. Shannon, he's not the typical college student. He is the 6'7" captain of the basketball team.
They immediately tell you his size. In closing arguments, they want to remind you that this man is 6'7".
He's got the NIL deals.
Calling him the big man on campus.
He might as well be the king of the University of Illinois.
They called him, he might as well be the king. So he has all this power and he's 6'7". That's like really what some of these cases base everything on, is the outward appearance and a perception of power. And because we're trying to convey that to you, jury, you should assume that he did what we're saying he did.
And saying Shannon can get anything he wants.
And what he wanted, September 9th of last year. It's a typical college student, dressed to go out for a Friday night.
The defense went next.
This is not about Air Jordans or free stuff. This is about someone's life.
Mark Sutter continued to attack Lawrence police and Detective Josh Leitner.
He doesn't do a thing. The only thing he does is sit in his office and waits for to come in and talk to him and says, oh, you Googled him? You found him?
Sutter didn't like how the investigation was handled. Next, he focused on the DNA evidence.
There's no male DNA found inside or outside of the vagina. That blows the case out of the water. We should all walk in the jury room, vote, come back, and leave. But there's so much more.
Then he once again references Arterio Morris. He's the former Kansas basketball player who was dismissed from the team 2 weeks before this incident. That's because he was charged with rape, but that was later dropped. In the end, jurors sided with Shannon.
And let's pay attention to that clarification. Someone else was charged, and it was possibly a third-party culprit here. But for them, that person, their charges were dropped. by the district attorney. It didn't go to trial.
Response so far, only this video.
You set the trend. Ooh, talk heavy, George. Because you don't want who God put in position to lead this generation. You don't want who God put in position to lead your family. You don't want who God put in position to break through and not break down.
We reached out to the Douglas County District Attorney, and the spokesperson says, quote, "It takes tremendous courage for a survivor of sexual assault to come forward. We will continue to pursue justice on behalf of survivors." Shannon's attorney.
Now, I'm kind of glad that they kept this as general language. They're saying it takes tremendous courage for a survivor, and it seems like they're speaking generally. But if you're not paying attention, it could also lean the other way. It could also seem like they're still insinuating that this witness that came forward and made these claims is still a survivor. They're still categorizing the accuser, their key witness, as a survivor, even after a not guilty verdict, a full acquittal.
Just got back to us as well, and they say, quote, "As we stated in September of 23, we empathetically denied these charges and waited for our day in court. That time has come. The jury has spoken and justice was served. The public owes Terrence Shannon Jr. an apology." Reporting in the newsroom, Amanda Brennan, WCIA 3, your local news leader.
All right, Amanda, thank you so much. Now, Shannon's teammates responded to the verdict on social media. Coleman Hawkins said he was not celebrating the verdict because, quote, "I know who my guy is." He also said, "Imagine playing in front of sellout crowds with people saying the craziest things to you, and you're innocent. Extremely proud of my guy to be able to block out all of that noise and compete at an extremely high level." Marcus Damask and Luke Goody also both responded. Marcus saying, "Mood, go be great in the league family."
We have.
So there's our video coverage, and from here we're going to be looking at Mitch Gilfillan for his coverage. He was in the courtroom and he was doing a lot of details for this 3-day trial. Before we start reading that, though, I do want to just check in with you guys, though. We have Tabby saying a crappy lawyer. And then Peter, so you're saying you avoid the courts near you. I think you said you were in Cape Town earlier, right? Let me go all the way back up. Yeah, so you said Cape Town courts are ... tough. I can imagine what tough means. Doesn't sound positive. And then let's see, guys need body cams these days. I mean, that could be a solution, but sounds impractical. And then what happens if it's not running? Then they'll just say you must be guilty because it wasn't running at a certain moment. And then Pam, King of the Universe, I think it was King of the University, but I heard the same thing until it processed. And then Live from New York City. This is, to me, yeah. So Live from New York City says that the lawyer basically said, speaking about the prosecutor, big, scary black man. Yeah, we get that, 6'7", has all the power in the world, might as well be the king. And that was him in closing arguments, trying to tell the jury, go convict this man. And we're going to tell you about his stature and his power. So, and yeah, so Delta Ray has the same sentiment. So just to be clear here, so it's the prosecutor, because this is a criminal case, this isn't civil, and I'd be interested to see if the accuser tries to open a civil case after this. Or on the flip side, if TSJ tries to open a civil suit against, you know, maybe malicious prosecution, I don't know. Probably just wants to move on after all of this. But here you're saying that he knows damn well his client is a liar. What does being 6'7"? So that's why I think you're talking about the prosecutor and the witness, the accuser. What does him being 6'7" and captain of the team have to do with anything? Exactly. And then Drea says that the typical college student moniker does them no favors, though, from what we can think of the stereotypical portrayal of a college student. Now, in the very beginning, with the opening statements, we heard a little mention of she thought she was just going out. She got dressed up to go out for a night, and she's quite introverted. She had a little bit to drink. We're going to hear a little bit different from that because people are saying she went out almost every night to the same place. So, you know. And then no DNA is also interesting. I mean, maybe, who knows? But she said she went right away. She reported right away, and then they found no DNA. So, and then hey to the Haven. Look at you, that's right. Say hey to the whole chat. I love the chat. So I love when you guys come in here and say hey to each other. And then, yeah, it sounds like they're still characterizing her as a victim. And then Michael, that's true too. So Michael says lawyers hate to lose, so maybe allegations without evidence will be less charged. So that's true. And guys, I am covering, I'm going to record it all because it's huge. It's going to be like 4 hours when it's done. It's a case that's been going on for years where there's been like, there's like more than 50 alleged victims and more than a dozen have come forward to try to report it to police. But the police were being extorted and they're in trouble now. And they were just letting everything go with this guy. And this guy finally got caught. And then he escapes out of a van while he's being transported. And then he's caught again. And he's finally supposed to be on trial in a two weeks, I think? In about a week and a half. So I've got a case recap to lead up to how we got there. But it's a great example of, you know, sometimes the prosecution hates to lose, but sometimes the police aren't giving the prosecution the proper reporting that they could use to bring proper charges against real crimes that happened, right? Because there's two moving parts there, right? You have your police doing the police work, then you have the prosecution doing the actual prosecution. So if the police aren't doing, you know, a thorough investigation, they're not looking around, they're just deciding, oh, we're just going to pin it on that guy and not do much other work. We're just going to kick our feet up. Whatever, who cares? It makes it hard for a prosecutor to actually prosecute and convict someone that may have actually committed a crime. So it's good to see you as always, Michael. And then let's see here. And yeah, so they didn't find out that she went out to the same place all the time because the police didn't even go and talk to the bar, talk to the venue. We heard that in one of the earlier videos. They didn't even go investigate the very venue where this supposedly happened within the venue. So there's your answer there. It's crazy. And then thanks so much. It was kind of crazy. Whatever the live stream I did the other day, there were 3,000 people in it. And shout out to Drea because I like put her on the spot on accident. I wanted to offer her to be a mod. I didn't know it automatically would make her be a mod. And then she's so gracious. And I love Drea. I love her as a regular chatter. But I'm so appreciative, Drea, that you took the mod position. It was crazy the other night, unexpectedly so. And now we're going to get to these crazy recaps. So we get a little bit of insight here from Mitch saying that pre-trial, and I don't know if this will make it easier if I can zoom in at all, but pre-trial, this final pre-trial hearing, this was on May 31st. The case is still set for the trial on June 10th. They thought maybe it'd be 4 days. There was a pool of 72 jurors. It was narrowed down to the 12 with 2 alternates. And TSJ rejected any plea deals that were offered right before trial started. So he was offered a plea and he said nope. And then let's move forward to, we're on June 5th. Now this is where we're going to talk about the DA's filing a motion to continue the jury trial yesterday, claiming that the DA was double booked. So that ends up being fine. They work around that. But then today, the DA filed a motion to reconsider that ruling. Interestingly, in the motion filed today, the DA poses a hypothetical that TSJ is perhaps receiving special treatment because he is an NBA draft prospect. Sounds like they didn't have much of a strong argument heading into trial if they're trying to levy that at that point in time, June 5th. Questioning a judge's ruling is always dicey in a motion to reconsider. In essence, you are trying to point out to the court that they are wrong, but to undermine that decision with hypotheticals is a risky move. Given the history with the DA's office and the judges in this county, it is undeniable and undisputed an open investigation is ongoing against the Chief District Attorney, Suzanne Valdez, for alleged unprofessional behavior towards Douglas County judges. 4 professional rules of misconduct were taken before a judiciary panel on December 18th, 2023. A 3-day hearing took place on December 18th, 2023 to determine if she violated any ethical issues. There's no firm timeline for the panel to come to a decision in that case. When asked if she plans to run again for the lead DA position in 24, Valdez said absolutely. The complaint filed against TSJ on December 5th, 2023 was not filed by Chief DA Valdez. It was filed by the ADA instead. Objectively speaking, it's no wonder the assistant ADA filed the complaint, because Valdez was already probably predicting that ethical hearing was coming up on the 13th. She had to have that notice of a hearing at some point. So if there's 13 days between when this filing was made and this ethical hearing actually took place, it's likely that Valdez already knew this was coming and said, hey, you file this instead, otherwise it might not stick. There's no ruling yet on the motion to reconsider filed today, and again, this is June 5th, but TSJ withdrew his motion to exclude the DNA evidence and an expert report. That's very interesting. Why would that be? We've already found out, but on June 5th, I would have said that sounds like the DNA report is probably really favorable to the defense's case and not so good for the prosecution's. So since the case is assigned to a new judge, there's going to be another hearing on June 7th, and they're going to start the trial on the 10th. And then from here, I think Mitch was learning to use threads. So it's going to get easier to read from this point forward, which is really nice. And then let's see, May 10th. I don't know why it just scrolled me back all the way so far down. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So this is the actual decision, and we're going to look at this. So major decision looming for the judge. TSJ's new filing at 1:54 a.m. The defense attorneys were working late. Asked judge to admit video evidence of a different person committing a similar act in the same bar less than 2 weeks before the TSJ alleged incident. What does this say? So on May 10th through 12th, based upon the alleged victims, and this is so tiny. Let's do it this way. So on May 10th through 12th, based upon the alleged victims' descriptions at preliminary hearing, counsel was able to determine that the third-party defendant could be seen in surveillance video at the precise location that she had described. Counsel was also generally aware of charged, but later voluntarily dismissed by the state. So we heard about that a little bit in the video. These allegations of graping, the same thing, at a different location, shortly before this all apparently happened, on August 26, 2023. But however, after some investigation over the weekend, counsel learned that the young woman involved in the August 26, 2023 incident also told police that she was essayed by the same third party earlier in the evening at the bar, where Mr. Shannon is alleged to have essayed the victim that they're initializing as MN. So it seems like there was not just the presence of this third party potential culprit the night and at the same location of where Mr. Shannon is being accused and charged with doing something horrible to somebody. But that same third party culprit might have been doing the same thing not too long before that. And the police say, we're not even going to go talk to the venue to get some information from them about TSJ. We're not going to do it. On Monday, May 13th, 2024, counsel for Mr. Shannon contacted counsel for the state to advise that the third party was on video in the exact area that MN, the alleged victim, had identified at the preliminary hearing, and to inquire as to the state's knowledge of the alleged 8/26/23 assault by the third party at the bar. Undersigned counsel was indicated in their belief, and since this is images, let me go and switch to the second image. Or that might be the third one. How did they lay this out? Come on, Mitch. So hold on. 8, 9. I don't see a paragraph 10 anywhere, so I don't really know how his document is switching back and forth. So we're going to go to this one. Sorry. Video evidence also places the third party at the same bar in the same small corner area at the time that LR was assaulted on 8/26. So they're saying that the same person was standing in the same place. And I don't know, guys, like, okay, when I used to go out when I worked in nightlife and had a night off, there was always a certain spot in the same venues that would be like our corner. Like me and my people would be in that corner. So it's not completely irrelevant. It might not be conclusive, but it might not also be irrelevant to say this person that we're also looking at as a third party was standing in the same spot in the same venue when this other accusation was made. So, what else do we have here? So they'd been introduced to the third party, and they knew him by name and face. She had spoken to him very briefly before he put his arm around her waist, then immediately and without consent or warning, touched her vagina. So that was the accusation back in August about this other person. In LR's case, she was wearing leather pants, so he was not able to digitally penetrate. 4 days later, LR reported the incident to police, who reviewed footage from the bar's surveillance cameras and confirmed that the third party was in the area she had described, but they could not see the touching due to his location, the camera angle, and the crowd of people. Police interviewed an eyewitness, MR, who had seen the touching. Police did not contact the third party about this incident until September 11th, 2023, 2 days after the incident in our case. And then it says police prepared a probable, and let's see, Mitch, what do we got? Yeah, so none of these images seem to read with the next sentence here. But yeah, so this is disjointed. But the next thing says, in the case at the bar, the state will present the testimony of MN, who says that Mr. Shannon waved to her to come across and the extremely crowded bar, then reached through several people to grab some part of her body that she can't recall and pull her to him. She claims she saw him do this. Once he got her close to him, he held her to a position where she stood beside him, both with their backs to the wall. As she looked straight ahead, never again making eye contact or speaking to the person, MN felt a hand move from the outside of her skirt to her buttocks under her skirt before flicking her underwear aside and inserting and penetrating. So MN continued to look straight ahead for 5 to 10 seconds until the man removed his finger and then she left the bar. MN identified Mr. Shannon from the internet as the person who stood to her left and did this. To his left, she says, was a witness, KM, who she knew by name and face, as well as a female who was grinding on a person she believed was Mr. Shannon. These 4 persons were purportedly all standing along a wall that is 26.5 inches wide. Video evidence reveals that Mr. Shannon was not the person immediately next to... And let's see if this Yeah, so the last image here doesn't seem to follow there either. So we've gone through... He has 4 images in his post, and we've gone through them, and they don't follow from each other, but whatever. And then in this motion, they're saying the test for this court is to determine whether to admit this evidence, this video evidence that's showing this stuff. And the judge is ultimately going to agree and grant this order, grant this motion. So, yeah. So that was a messy tweet. But I'm still very appreciative of Mitch here because this is really the only insight we're getting. We don't have inside coverage of this court from gavel to gavel. So... And then where do we go? I think we have some witnesses come in. Where do we get to day 1? We get jury selections nearing the end. Attorneys are meeting with their respective sides. Opening statements will start tomorrow. And the jurors are very curious about media coverage, alcohol experiences, or this is voir dire. Media coverage, alcohol experiences, bias, and ability to follow jury instructions. So that was the main focus of voir dire. Jurors can't talk to anyone. And then let's see, it was 15 total were selected, only 12 make the final cut. So there's 8 males, 7 females, and of that, 3 are alternates. The alternates are unknown until jury deliberates. The oldest male is approximately late 50s, youngest female is 20s. There are 13 Caucasians, 1 Philippine, and 1 African American on the jury. Now, shout out they came back with a not guilty verdict, but, you know, that already doesn't seem very much like a jury of peers, but... You know, now we're going to talk about opening statements. And then, hey to Ghost, good to see you. And then, let's see. This case was tried in a small town too. Yeah. And I think like the reason it had any spotlight was because it involved a draft candidate, an NBA draft candidate. So, in a lot of small towns, jurors would have went for the prosecutor's BS. Yeah. And then you never know about it if it doesn't get any coverage. You just, oh, well... When someone's convicted, well, then they're absolutely guilty, right? That's how some people act. And if they're not convicted, well, the jury got it wrong. There's some people that have that absolute belief that someone's guilty no matter what a jury ends up deciding. They're just stuck with it. So, it frustrates me. And then, so was she assaulted but pointed out the wrong person, or was she aware of this happening and used that as her story? Drea, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out. Find out. It's going to be good. It's going to be interesting. So, MN gave multiple statements to police. MN's statements mostly consistent, but not consistent with overall investigation. And remember, MN is the star witness, the one that says this happened to her. The alleged victim never used the word scared or terrified until the preliminary hearing 8 months after incident occurred. So the defense is opening, it's going to be inconsistent, and she started puffing up her story 8 months later with things that she wasn't saying initially. The defense opening hammered the police investigation in this case. No one from the Jayhawk Cafe, where this happened, was interviewed by detectives. Did not interview any of the KU basketball players until months after the probable cause affidavit as basis for the complaint filed on December 5th, 2023. No effort to talk to any Illinois players or staff to discuss what happened. No one witnessed anything, according to defense. The defense goes on in their opening statements to say that the alleged victim went to LM Hospital and a SANE exam was performed all over her body. So this is like the kit, the grape kit. It was performed all over her body and submitted to KBI for testing approximately 15 hours after the incident. The DNA does not show any male DNA inside her body, and external genitalia does not show any male DNA pointing to TSJ. DNA does not support that anyone was groping all around her vagina as alleged. So his attorney ends up saying he did not do this. This is a quote now. And he would not do this. Unlike most kids, he has a real chance to play in the NBA and would never screw this up with all eyes on him. They went on to discuss how well his mother raised him and how positive everyone views TSJ. And then, let's see. I think he did a separate thread for prosecution. I don't see a prosecution opening statements. So, who knows? So his next tweet says that the first witness in the case is the alleged victim, who's now 19 years old. MN admitted she had a fake ID to get into the bar, but does not like to drink. Going over logistics of the night and what unfolded prior to the incident. About 40 people are in attendance. Now and this is a thread now. So his threads are all over, but we'll figure it out. Here, so now we have the DA opening statement. So this is a little disjointed, I apologize. So the DA's opening statement, he says that there's a theme. There's eye contact, it led to a wave, which led to her body being violated. The opening statement was less than 15 minutes. The state admits that there is no video of the incident, and DNA does not point to TSJ. Their evidence, the alleged victim knows it was him. We've got two problems with that type of evidence, right? There could be a well-meaning witness that's honestly trying to remember and report and identify someone, but they could be unreliable. That's problem one. Problem two, it's unreliable, it's not accurate, but it's maliciously inaccurate. It's knowingly inaccurate. So, let's keep going. That's their evidence. That's their opening statement. Sounds really strong. The first witness of the case is the alleged victim. So this is where it's disjointed. Okay. Then it gets to this statement. So as he pulled me towards him, he shifted arm around to my hip on top of my skirt. He then moved under my skirt to grab my butt. He moved my underwear and put his fingers inside me. So I remember initially we were reading that she didn't really remember the motion of being pulled over. But okay, she has a statement while she's testifying. She remembers then. She says she was standing next to TSJ, both facing forward, and never spoke. TSJ attorneys cross-examining the alleged victim on prior statements to police and statements from the May 10th preliminary hearing, as her testimony today is somewhat different. This legal tactic is used to undermine witness credibility, which will be attacked in closing arguments. So, I think that might be all we have of her testimony. Because that's it, right? According to her, it was a short interaction. She stood there for 5-10 seconds and then left the bar as soon as this was done. So then we get Officer Muniz. Right? Let's see. Corey Green. So the next witness is an SA nurse. Corey Green discusses details of assault exam along with explaining the chain of custody. Despite the exam being within 24 hours of alleged crime, there appears to be no blood or urine draw, and because alleged victim, she didn't consent to such at the hospital. So she goes to get this SANE exam done, but doesn't consent to a blood or urine draw. Interestingly, state of Kansas model policy for SA says blood and urine specimens should be collected by a medical professional with the victim's consent. No consent form or test results for blood urine in this case were admitted into evidence. And then Officer Muniz also testified. He was the first officer the alleged victim spoke to after the incident. He met her and her friend together, not breakout rooms. Oh my God, so the friend that's also a witness is speaking with this officer together. That's a red flag. Later, I mean, maybe not necessarily a red flag, but it's not proper for the officer to not separate two people that he needs to take statements from, that he wants to get information from. That's crazy. Later, Officer Muniz reached back out as he forgot to get the witness's name. Great job. Officer testified that the report doesn't say that she was terrified night in question. Officer Muniz was very new to the police force. Feels like he was just doing his job, but investigations like this have to be near perfect. Yeah, and okay, that kind of makes sense that he's new. A little bit. Kind of, maybe. But this is important, right? Investigations like this have to be near perfect. So, you know, at the end of the day, if this was really something that happened, if there was really a crime committed by TSJ, and we have a not guilty verdict just because this was sloshy and messy, that's not great either. That's not really justice. So that's a good point here. And then, let's see, and I'm telling you guys, this is like short 3-day case, moving quick. And we only have Mitch Gilfillan really giving us the rundown. So June 11th. Now he says intense. Officer Leitner testifying. Now we heard a shot fired at Leitner in the beginning by the opening statements from the defense counsel. He was like, all you have to do is sit there and kick your legs up. Officer Leitner testifies. He seems qualified with plenty of experience, but the defense attacked his investigation. He was lead detective on the case. His first task was to interview alleged victim and friend. Also spoke with KU basketball players. He went through mountains of cell data. Interesting. You'll figure out why. Leitner discussed internet searches conducted after the incident by alleged victim regarding KU athletes, Illinois athletes. She found TSJ and she, quote, knew it was him. Leitner zeroed in on TSJ and did not consider any other witnesses, is what the defense brought out. Jury took many notes during this. So, victim doesn't know much. She goes and Googles, finds somebody, searches athletes specifically, finds somebody, presents it to Leitner. Leitner doesn't go and interview the staff at the venue where this allegedly took place, but just zeroes in on TSJ. That's it. That's his focus. He's got blinders on. Surveillance footage was down in parts of Jayhawk Cafe. Went over video footage in great detail. Bar is complete maze to a novice. From the video, Jayhawk Cafe was jam-packed. Kevin McCullough on video, seated on top of the bar, just vibing. I don't know if that's another player. Alleged incident happens off camera. The defense went hard after the detective's investigation. So here's where we have the defense. This is our look at cross-examination of the lead detective. The lead detective never went to Logies to confirm what alleged victim drank or did that night. And remember, we don't have a blood or urine test either. Never conducted any investigation. Did not go to Martini Room itself after incident. Did not take any photos. Did not get any measurements of room. Never interviewed several roommates of alleged victim. Did not determine total alcohol consumption. Did not find it relevant she used fake ID. Detective did not include in his affidavit what hand she was assaulted with. No part of affidavit used the word force, which is required under state law to prove the crime of rape. It's an element. Many points to argue to a jury. And then Mitch says here he thinks the strongest attack was that the detective never linked or investigated possibility that a third party involved in a similar act 2 weeks prior was relevant to TSJ's case. There were 2 simultaneous investigations being done, but third party was not ruled out despite being on video the night TSJ was there. So, yeah, good job, lead detective. You would think you would at least have some curiosity about something like that. And then let's see. We have one more from June 11th that wasn't part of that thread. Rory McIlroy with a sand wedge out of the bunker. Oh, this is a different thing. Okay, cool. That's why it's not part of it. And then now we're in day 3. So this is going to sort of be the end before closing arguments. The first witness is the alleged victim's best friend, RB, who has known alleged victim since 8th grade. The state is going through her background, and she acknowledged that she was under 21, but had been to Jayhawk Cafe 30 to 40 times. Says they didn't do any pre-gaming that night. Wanted to be social, bar was packed and no room to move. MN, the alleged victim, wanted to leave but was waved over by TSJ. MN thought he was cute, and so friend told her to go talk to him. There was another woman grinding on TSJ. Witness did not see MN's interaction with TSJ. So you go over to talk to someone who's currently dancing with another girl? I mean, whatever. Maybe it's like, you know, maybe that's the thing. I don't know. The friend became emotional discussing the ride home and holding MN's hand. Didn't speak to her that night as they got home around 1 a.m. Next day, MN told her she did internet searches all night to find out who it was. Now we're going to get to cross-exam. And this is all sounding like, all right, he said, she said, what can you do, right? Let's see. This cross, sorry, it's really confusing to figure out Mitch's stuff, but I'm very, very excited that he covered all this. So I think this is where the cross thread starts. A 19-year-old against a seasoned attorney is something. MN's best friend at trial now claims she saw TSJ grab, not forcefully, MN's wrist over to him. However, the best friend never reported that to police or state's attorneys at any time. Today, she testified that that happened. This witness is simply being a good friend. Unfair to attack or blame her for MN for this entire saga if something happened. Victims of assault without consent that have no voice should be heard and not disregarded. However, you must be 100% right. No one wins in any of this. This witness, the best friend, continues to get somewhat tripped up on what she did or did not report to police. What happened the night of the incident? The state attempts to rectify by asking, do you have a perfect memory? And the answer is no. So they definitely did some redirect, it sounds like. Let's see. Hunter Dickinson is on the stand. He crossed, or maybe she, Hunter could be a girl, crossed paths with TSJ in recruiting, okay, probably a guy, and played against each other. In Martini Room, the night TSJ was, within 10 feet of him. TSJ had control of himself and seemed normal. Hunter was drinking. LPD interviewed Hunter around January about the September incident, so they waited for like 4 months. Women are always around basketball players, he says, and women were present that night. He didn't witness anything happen. Now we get Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Extensive DNA testimony. It was way over the layperson's head, including mine. TSJ's DNA was not detected near the vaginal area. 4 swabs were done. Or inner thigh, buttocks, 2 swabs. No amplification testing due to insufficient amount of DNA to further test. However, lack of male DNA evidence does not necessarily exclude him either, is the point that the DA was attempting to make, or at least it seemed. There was an insufficient amount of DNA to do further testing, but there was also background noise, a DNA medical phrase for inconclusive interpretation. And then testimony from this morning, so this might be out of order. Interesting revelation, alleged victim and her best friend both attended SA exam at hospital. That same night, 24 hours after alleged TSJ incident, they went back out again to the Jayhawk Cafe. Would this matter if you served on the jury? And the comments say absolutely. The first comment says absolutely. And then the state of Kansas rests their case. Now turns to TSJ defense to put their case in chief on. The defense did not move for a directed verdict. They asked which is asking the judge to dismiss the case after the state rests their case in chief, because it would be denied based on an alleged victim's testimony. So they're saying, you know, typically when you make that motion, usually the number one thing you would lean on is sufficiency of the evidence. And, you know, that argument, you got to take the evidence presented at face value. So because someone had the testimony and then also the best friend says, yeah, he grabbed the wrist and that's around the time frame it happened, they probably didn't even go through this because it would have just been denied. And then let's see. So these are out of order, but this one seems like a thread on the first defense witness, Stephanie Bain, a forensic scientist hired by the defense. Her role was to discredit the KBI testing. The testimony was incredibly scientific and educational, words, phrases that are tough to pronounce. In short, TSJ is 100% excluded from buttocks as DNA contributor. DNA showed inner thigh mixture of DNA of 2 or more males. Bain found vaginal swab quantitation DNA result for male component as 0. Underwear samples had insufficient amount of male DNA. She questioned if there was male DNA at all to move forward with additional testing. So it's unfair to cast shade on an alleged victim with reported DNA of different males. This could have come from gloves, testing tools, secondary transfers. The fact she had not showered or changed undergarments makes it more likely DNA would be detected to match a certain profile. And what would you make if you heard that DNA? Like, we did find the presence of DNA, but it didn't belong to the person that she says she looked up and knows was him. So another witness for the defense, Deshaun Hobson, testified. His role was to keep an eye on TSJ. See, you have one job. Always kept eyes on him, never lost sight. Lawrence PD never contacted him. Never saw TSJ grab another girl that night. TSJ is low-key and would not put himself in this position. Kevin McCullough Jr. testified via Zoom from California. He's a former Texas Tech teammate. Summary, TSJ is not a big drinker. Never saw him interact with any girls that night, but did not watch him the whole time. Found out on X about December arrest. Never heard from police until February of 2024, where he gave interview. He knew TSJ came with teammate and coach. McCullough was sort of the host of this trip. He never saw another female grinding on TSJ, never witnessed TSJ pull a girl closer to him, and never witnessed anything happened as being alleged. This is the part, guys. This is the part. This is the part. This is the defense's case in chief. And what is the defense saying in court to the jury? Well, when an ESPN article broke on December 28th of 2023 about these TSJ allegations, group text messages offered into evidence show, friend, ESPN article link shared, OMG, best friend, you got him. Alleged victim, yup, yes sir, friend, got his ass, money, money emojis. And then the defense attorneys blew up the emoji faces on an exhibit. Yeah, I would too. We're gonna make the emojis extra big. We're gonna ask you, what does that mean? What does that emoji mean? How do you interpret that emoji? Why did you use that emoji instead of another emoji? You know, like maybe a heart or something to show that you care, or maybe like, I don't know. There's scales of justice in there. E. Capone's not in the chat tonight, but when I see E. Capone, you know, we do the justice junkies joke, and we use the scales of justice emoji at each other. You could use an emoji like that if you want to celebrate someone's finally getting justice for something that happened to you. But instead, we get the money symbols, the money mouth, with a yup, yes sir in all caps. You got him. And maybe that was an accident. Maybe it was just in her recent emojis. She just hit that one when she meant to hit something else. I don't know. Is there an excuse for that? So then we have a character witness testify that Terrence is kind, trustworthy, and always showed up on time. He had no flaws in his character and is a gentle giant. Even to this day, I'm shocked that we're sitting here. The headlines don't match the person sitting here. And then the DA's cross-examination. You weren't present, were you, at the Jayhawk Cafe? No, which is really, that's what you would expect. And yeah, oh yeah, you know what? They could have used these money symbols instead, Peter. You're absolutely right. They had other options, but they used them with the money for the eyes and the tongue. And then what do we have here? So we have an occurrence witness. Justin Harmon was called as an occurrence witness. He was along for the trip to Lawrence in September. TSJ and Harmon are brothers, in quotes, as he told the jury. He never witnessed anything happen to, as the allegations state. He was close to TSJ all night. Yes, they drank, but were not intoxicated. For those interested, here's a photo that's now deleted of the alleged victim, matched on Instagram to identify TSJ to police. So this was not evidence in the criminal trial. So this is what she brought to the police to say, here we go. This is who did it. I'm just going to point to him. Say it was him. And then it's not used as evidence in the trial, which is kind of weird. Because if this is how she identified him, it's interesting that it wouldn't be admitted as evidence. But who knows, right? Weirder things have happened. And then final day tomorrow. Last few witnesses called in the morning. Closing arguments are expected at 1:30. The Kansas DA office has 2 criminal laws charged, and the keywords are force and fear. So the elements of the underlying crime need to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. And again, we're talking about rape and battery, sexual battery. And then I think, let's see. Oh, okay, wait, do we have recall? Okay, so as day 4 started, Mitch reported that the defense was expected to call an Illinois assistant coach and could be their last witness, but that the DA may recall. So what happens on day 4? They're going to recall the victim to explain the group text messages and why they went back out the night after the alleged incident to the exact same bar of the alleged crime, hours after leaving the hospital exam. Because that's true, right? Like, what would that time frame be? Like, say the average person goes out at like 10 p.m. If this was like 2 in the morning, they leave the bar. Let's say 1 in the morning, they leave the bar. 12 hours later would be 1 p.m. So 15 would put that at 4 p.m. if she went and did the same kit. Maybe that takes like 2 hours to do. 6 p.m. And then you go out at 9 or 10, 11 p.m. that night. That was like how the day was spent. I don't know. I can see like why that's weird. That's odd behavior. It's not conclusory, but it's odd for sure. So the assistant coach does testify. He's a character witness, known since 8th grade. Grew up in similar tough Chicago neighborhoods. He was a mentor, never lost contact with him. He got emotional during testimony. Tim poured his heart out for TSJ, his family, and the pain they felt. This is not the person that would do anything like this. And then TSJ has taken the stand. Major testimony coming up here, and the courtroom is packed. He doesn't do a thread here, so we're going to have to... Let's see. This is broken, so we're going to go way up to the beginning. This looks like maybe, let's see. TSJ's compelling testimony. We've got a lot to piece together here, but, quote, I never pulled a girl to me that night. I never touched her that way. I never stuck my hand under a girl's skirt. It did not happen. Did you ever insert your fingers into her body? That did not happen. The first time I ever saw her was at the preliminary hearing on May 10th. Is there anything else you want to tell the jury about that night? I did not grab, touch, pull, grape, or assault the alleged victim. The cross-examination by the DA was perplexing. 80% of the questions to TSJ related to his NBA future. They're going to make him look powerful, aren't they? His fame and celebrity status. The amount of apparel and gear he receives. People that look out for him. Scholarships. And NIL money. Now, I could understand how you might want to make the argument that someone might be afraid to go and get tested and bring charges against someone that is famous because there's a lot of people loved. But this isn't a situation where this girl hesitated. She immediately went and Googled, went and got tested, and then went to the police to say, this is the person in the picture. And then they don't use the picture she used as evidence in the actual trial. So with that situation being the context here, if 80% of the prosecution's cross-examination of their claimed perpetrator, of the person they're charging and trying to convict, if 80% of their questions are related to, oh, you're an NBA draft candidate, aren't you? You're famous, right? People like you. You get free stuff, don't you? Is that a very good case? Is that a very good case? Figure out Mitch's puzzle pieces here. So we have separate highlights here for TSJ testimony highlights. He explained why he was in Kansas, what he did before the game, after the game, and arrived at Jayhawk Cafe at 10:30ish. Went to McCarthy Hall after the game, took 2 Crown Apple shots, then to Jayhawk. Went to Martini Room where athletes hang to meet everyone. There was nothing memorable about the night. I did not consume enough alcohol to impact my memory. Coaches notified him the following day after practice about incident that happened in Jayhawk Cafe bathroom. His attorney, Mark Sutter, immediately got involved. TSJ is supposed to meet with KS detective, but meeting got canceled because detective had to go to Florida. Later in September, a search warrant was served on TSJ to obtain his DNA. First thing he noticed was his name was spelled wrong. He thought they had the wrong guy or mistaken identity. When questioned about the seriousness of allegations, he responded, "I would never do anything like this because a member of my family was raped in the past." He could never comprehend doing this. He genuinely thought they had the wrong guy, but he complied with the warrants. Heard nothing for months, I think that's a typo, until heard a warrant had been issued for his arrest late December. Turned himself in immediately. So now keep in mind here, we've already heard that the DNA doesn't tie to him. So he complies with these warrants for his DNA. He complies with them. His DNA is not found. And then later, there's still a warrant issued for his arrest anyway. Right in that time frame where the DA Sandra Velez knows that she's got this ethics hearing coming up. So, hey, ADA, you file this. You do this one. On the way home, he learned he was suspended from the basketball team. He filed a lawsuit against the school, won, and the federal court granted an injunction so he could play again. The university did an investigation, and he fully cooperated. TSJ did not refuse to answer any questions at any point. In the fall, the university case was dismissed for insufficient evidence, all said right in front of the jury. So they tell the jury that another investigation was conducted, and the university dismissed it for lack of evidence. And I wonder if that also means that the jury heard about this federal court injunction. I'm not sure if this applies just to this post or if it applies to both. But if the jury heard about this, that's probably really helpful to the defense. I'm sure that the DA fought that. And he says he always knew the eyes were on him at all times due to his NBA prospects. And then I want to make sure I'm not missing anything because this part was really all over. Okay, I think we got that. And then the jury goes on break. Then they do closing arguments, which we saw a clip from the prosecution and the defense, a short clip of earlier at the beginning of this live stream. And then let's see. They're dealing with jury instructions. And then he says, a follow-up from this morning, I'm told that the DA was fully prepared to recall the alleged victim for rebuttal testimony and had every intention to call her heading into today to address certain evidence. However, last-minute decision made not to call her back up after TSJ testified. Interesting. Interesting. And here we have a summary of the prosecution's closing argument. A tale of a typical college student and a typical student. A lot of things in life, he gets what he wants. They provided the instruction to the jury. It was listed incorrectly on the DA's PowerPoint, which he apologized for. Honestly, that can be, guys, if you're doing closing arguments, it's known that closing arguments aren't supposed to be evidence, but a key part of closing arguments is, kind of trying to aid the jury in understanding the jury instructions, and if they want to return the verdict in your favor, whatever you're arguing, this is what they're going to be seeing on the paper, this is what they need to fill out. You want to walk them through that because it can be really complicated. So if your PowerPoint, while you're delivering your closing arguments, your PowerPoint that's meant to help explain the jury instructions and what you want the jurors to fill out is incorrect, that's actually a really major appellate issue. So he apologized, and sometimes that's seen as a corrective measure in the moment, so it wouldn't be reversible error on appeal, but sometimes that's not sufficient. So that's a big mistake when you hear something like that. So went through MN's alleged shock and fear from the night. Shock and fear, but she went out the same night. This is something, guys, if you're sitting on the jury, and you decided, right? Let's do the creative licensing here. We're going to paint a story. You're sitting on the jury and you've already said, look, I'm not going to put too much weight into the fact that she went out after getting tested that same night. The night after this allegedly happened, she gets tested, and a few hours later, she's back at the same venue. I'm not even going to think anything like that because maybe she just wanted to forget, right? Maybe there was a valid reason for doing that. When you hear all of a sudden in closing argument, the last thing you're hearing the state argue for their side of the case. When you hear the word shock and fear, and they're saying that MN was in shock and fear that night, you're going to remember, but she went out. And then you're going to say, well, if she was experiencing shock and was fearful, then my other perception, my other possible explanation that I gave her the grace with, maybe she went out just to forget and put it behind her. She wanted to act like nothing happened. Prosecution's now telling you she was in shock and fear, which would be incompatible with your own reasoning while you're sitting there as a juror trying to come up with alternative reasons to be fair and considerate. This is a stupid thing to work into your closing argument. I don't really think that that's strong to remind the jury shock and fear when they know that she went out that night. What do you guys think if you were the juror and you heard this in closing arguments? Would that make you lean in favor of the prosecution's argument or not? So they end up providing the aggravated sexual battery instruction to the jury, which is, oh my god, it's also listed incorrectly on the PowerPoint, and then they have to apologize again. Bro, come on. The state has to prove he intended to arouse his own sexual desires, that he knew what he was doing. Why did TSJ do this? When he wants something, he gets it. He's the big man on campus. He might as well be the king of the University of Illinois. Asks the jury to convict him, but doesn't specially say, or in the alternative, sexual battery. So doesn't really give a good instruction on a lesser included. But whatever. They got their PowerPoints wrong, and I'm not surprised. Now we're going to get to the defense's closing arguments. There's two parts here. We have a section called fireworks in the closing. And more grenades. So we'll start with the fireworks one. It seems to be the correct order. And let me double check in with you guys. EC, so good to see you. And then High Value Man was here. He might not be here anymore, Marcelechka. I would love to see his insight on this. But I love seeing you guys over here in the chat. I love being able to chat with you in other streams. So it's always awesome when you're here. And then Denise. Hey, Denise. So he did not have a reaction of this happening to her. You fought guys in school when he lost his mind and touched his... Exactly. Exactly. I've puffed my chest out for other people, for my own friends. So the other layer of this here, Denise, to what you're saying, is she's saying that her friend was there. Her best friend since 8th grade, or I think that was the time frame, or since 8 years old. 8th grade, 8 years old. And the best friend is supposed to also be aware that this happened. Me as the best friend, let alone it happening to me and reacting for myself. I have an extra impulse to react and look out for the people that I'm around, the people that I care about. So I can't imagine being the friend that's trying to corroborate this story, who was there, who was right by their side, heard this happen, and was comforting her in the car. But you don't do anything right then and there? You don't tell security at the bar? At a place that you always go to, right? They go back out to the same place. In fact, the friend said she was like super regular. You know, the places I frequented, I felt comfortable talking to the staff. You know, maybe I'm more proactive when I go out and look around and see who's there. But if you're there enough times, you should be comfortable saying like, hey, like that guy did something inappropriate. Or hey, something just happened to us. Can we close our tab and leave or whatever? Why didn't anyone, not just the alleged victim, but the friend, why didn't they have the same thing that you're talking about? You gotta tell someone that they lose their mind just because they touch your butt, right? Why didn't the friend also feel the same way? Why did no one have this actual reaction to something like this happening? So, I don't know. And Andrea says cha-ching with the emojis. It's crazy. It's crazy. We have fireworks here, though. We have Mark Sutter, TSJ's attorney, owner of Sutter Law, just unleashed. Mitch is doing the all caps, guys. Shout out to Mitch. So he unleashes on the state of Kansas DA's office and the awful investigation to even file this case. This is not about Air Jordans or free stuff. This is about someone's life. This is not a trial. This is a travesty. Oh, I like that. It's not a trial, it's a travesty. We need that on t-shirts. Two things. Simple science shows that TSJ is not guilty of the crime. and zero attempts to have a real investigation. An indigent could never... Okay, so guys, indigent means someone that couldn't afford private counsel. They're usually stuck with a public defender, who's often overworked, under-resourced. So, in closing, defense counsel reminds the jury that an indigent could never have the resources to fight this case, and you should be concerned as citizens of this country. It raised an objection, which was sustained. Why? Because you're not supposed to ask or push or instruct the jury to come back with a verdict for the greater good of someone that's not actually the person they're meant to decide on. But I think this defense attorney wanted to have his moment, and I agree with the sentiment. I also understand why it was sustained. TSJ's attorney, Detective Leitner, filed the probable cause affidavit without even looking at a DNA report. And we talked about that earlier, you know. TSJ complies with the warrant for his DNA, and then months later he has an arrest warrant in front of him, even though there's no DNA match. So we know the police weren't going and talking to the venue. They ask for DNA, like this is going to be a give me. The guy gives up his DNA, it doesn't match, and he gets the arrest warrant anyway. So the defense says in closing that that was completely negligent and won't even refer to him as a real detective anymore, and neither should the citizens of Douglas County. Instead, you make my client get abused, ridiculed, and forced to stand trial. And honestly, guys, if the federal court didn't step in and issue that injunction, it would have absolutely decimated his career prospects. Not just the rest of his college experience, his athletic collegiate experience, but his future after college, his future going into, you know, the NBA as a draft prospect. Thank God for that federal injunction, because sometimes people don't get that kind of relief. An indigent person probably wouldn't get that kind of relief. He was able to. If that injunction didn't take place, his life during this time period would have even been worse than it probably was. So the defense also says that, quote, there is no male DNA found inside the vagina. You should all walk into the jury room. We all know he's not guilty. And everyone leave right now. And then Mitch says it's an absolute dagger. Quote, no DNA in vaginal vault. Ladies and gentlemen, look at the science before you move forward. There's no TSJ DNA near the buttocks, but certainly is of other men. Again, you should go in, sign the not guilty verdict, and we all leave. But folks, there's more, he said. And Mitch says absolute grenades. Leitner, he won't call him detective, ignored third-party charge with a similar crime. We have no burden, but we actually proved it wasn't him. So it's not our burden to prove the innocence of our client. That's the state's job. But we've hold my beer, guys. Because we actually proved that it was not our client. We proved him innocent. Not just not guilty, but we proved him innocent. Instead, Leitner files probable cause affidavit without DNA affidavit. Do not let this awful investigation ruin my client's life. That's crazy. So we find out that they leave this DNA affidavit out and then go and sign the probable cause affidavit when there's possible exculpatory evidence in that DNA testing. But yeah, I'm not surprised. It's annoying to hear, but it's not unusual anymore. Let's see. Let's get to his other thread. He had another one. More grenades. So in closing, we finally get this emoji mention brought up. How about the dollar sign emojis? He propositions a financial angle here. There are a lot of emojis to use. They could have used the praying hands, the scales of justice, a smiley face, a sad face. But instead, the group text chose money signs. There are no eyewitnesses, not even the alleged victim herself. He addresses sensitivity to SA, discusses his own family and daughters, how people react to being touched is different. He says so many options she could have done. Yell, Denise, this is for you. Yell, kick him in the balls, ask a bouncer for help, call a parent. Instead, she went and checked athletic rosters. A complete and utter assumption with no evidence. Another credibility check. The alleged victim is an introvert, doesn't like crowds, and hates alcohol, but she has a fake ID, been there 30 to 40 times, left one bar because it wasn't crowded enough, spilled a drink and got another. Ladies and gentlemen, please use your common sense. TSJ is an incredibly young man. Several character witnesses told you this. He graduated, but these people came back for him. This is not how he was raised. My client has suffered enough. Stop the madness. Sign the not guilty verdict on both so we can all go home. Thank you. And I think that's probably the end of the closing argument. What else do we got? You might have some interesting stuff about the minute 57 of deliberations. I don't know if he has anything interesting about the deliberations. Hour and 20 minutes. This must be unanimous. They have the verdict, and we know he's cleared on all charges, found not guilty. And then he notes that Miss Redding, who's TSJ's mom, was by her son the whole time. And says she deserves all the flowers. Aw. And then, yeah, so shout out to Mitch Gilfillan. That's really why we have the inside look at what happened with this case. It was Arbico that sent the news over about this verdict and gave me a quick summary of, hey, look, here's someone that was accused, and there wasn't really evidence that he did it. And in fact, there was kind of something that said it wasn't him that did it. And then the girl sent a money emoji. The girls were talking about money emojis when they found out he was arrested. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I started looking, and we see this shoddy police work. You know, really the typical recipe, guys. The typical recipe for someone to be falsely accused, falsely arrested, falsely charged, and gratefully in this case, not falsely convicted. Like, just crazy stuff. And then you guys are still, I think, I see, this is earlier then. So EC was talking about fight, or freeze. We're all different. This is not a sentence, it's a circus. Heck yeah. Yeah, and let's talk about that. So Peter, good point. I am curious about the other cases. This Detective Leitner, you know, what kind of work are you doing across the board if, in this example, you don't look like you're doing much work at all? To the point where in court, the defense attorney won't even call you a detective. And I would imagine, yeah, that might seem like a kind of interesting quip, kind of interesting thing to do. But I feel like most attorneys, and I don't know anything about this attorney, I don't know how he typically is, and we only got to see a small clip of his voice speaking in the courtroom. But I would imagine that you don't really want to ruffle feathers too much. If this is where you live, typically work and practice, you do kind of want to stay in good graces in case you want things to be cooperative and positive and not someone seeking revenge the next time you have a case that involves the same detective. So for him to go and say, I'm not even going to call him a detective, I think that that's pretty significant. I think that that carries weight. It could have also just been a tactic to play at the jury. And then Live from New York says, the certainly is of other men. Damn, she had multiple guys' DNA up on her that night. Now, I want to be clear, right? Touch DNA is a little bit crazy. This could be, you know, she could have been leaning against the wall where someone else, maybe they were wearing shorts or they like had their hand held to the wall, you know, like while all the guys dancing, girls in front of them, they're holding the wall to support themselves. That hand is leaving DNA the whole time, and someone else leaning on that can pick up that DNA, even if that person's hand never made direct contact with the person who ends up brushing by that wall and picking it up. It can be transferred. So having multiple DNA on her doesn't necessarily mean that multiple people were doing like evasive things with her throughout that night. But it would suggest that there should at least be something found from this person she's claiming she had a very close contact interaction with. And his DNA is absent entirely. So that's really the issue. You can't really conclude absolutely that there was like multiple guys doing things with her that night. In fact, it's probably just touch DNA. But it is interesting that they don't mention, and maybe because it wasn't relevant, they don't mention finding like female DNA on her. And then Denise is saying that players normally don't have to try that hard because there's money to gain. And if you're not a one-night stand. And then with Kansas and Missouri is totally drama at the clubs. I can imagine. And yeah, you eat with that hand. So guys, I wanted to cover this because when I heard about it, it was just such an example of, you know, there's no cameras in the courtroom. Could that have changed the course of this? Like, would the victim have wanted to testify if there were cameras in the courtroom? And technically there was, right? The news station had cameras in there, but they didn't stream it to YouTube. It's not like a permanent stream was up there. They recorded it and were able to make their news coverage with bits and pieces of it. But, you know, would that have changed the course of this entire trial if there was a bit more transparency? And I'm only just hearing about this because someone put it in front of me, but it seems like the accusations and the charges made against him rang very loud across the internet, across social media. Arbiko was saying that he was being, like, people were chanting at him, people were, you know, harassing, throwing insults at him. Like, it clearly impacted his life. The news of the charges and accusations spread. And now he's not guilty. He's found innocent. He's really innocent. To me, the evidence shows that he's innocent. He's full acquittal, unanimous jury. But he still had to go through this to get to this point. All because someone went on Google, looked up an athletic roster, picked someone, handed the picture she used to identify him to a police officer to say that was him. Sits in an interview with her best friend. They're not separated during this time period. They're able to speak together and know what the other one's saying. They have group texts where they're like, yes sir, yep, got him, smiley, money face. Just think of that. Just think of that. That could happen to anyone that someone thought was a viable target for this type of thing. And honestly, it could happen even if this actually, if this is credible, if this incident really happened and it was the third-party culprit that really did this, right? There would still be an issue of the unreliable testimony. Something genuinely could have happened here. She could have been violated. But unreliable witness testimony is putting someone else in the hot seat to be the subject of an arrest, an investigation, and an arrest. And honestly, now his, like, DNA is in the system. It's got to be in the system. So that kind of, like, can suck it away. Because if touch DNA comes up somewhere, you didn't do anything, but your DNA, you're the one with the hand on the wall, and somehow that gets transferred to someone else's skin, and they get tested, they're going to be like, well, we have this database, and this person comes up. Right? That kind of sucks, to be in a database, all because you're trying to do the right thing to clear your name with one thing that you didn't do. It could trip you up in the future for something else that you didn't do. Like, there's just so much here. And a lot of it could have been solved if the police gave two damns. And the second way it could have been solved is if the DA said, why should this even go to trial? But you have an NBA draft prospect. Maybe they wanted to score a high-profile conviction. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. We're going to close this one out, though. I do want to keep it relatively short in case anyone wants to pull up a place to look at the minimal coverage we have available of this all in one place. I appreciate you guys all for coming in here because I think it's important to talk about these things. I think the not guilty should be just as loud as the initial accusations. And then to close out, Peter said, can the defense ask for cameras in the courtroom? I believe they were permitted. I just don't think anyone really went in there with cameras. We have the one news station that just has clips, and I tried to check their website to see if they had like a watch live from each day where you could replay, you know, maybe they recorded the whole thing. But they didn't have anything up, so I wasn't able to find it. I'm not sure if it wasn't permitted, or if it was permitted only for parts. I don't know. But it seems like cameras were allowed in, but nobody fully streamed the case. And I do want to give a shout out. There is a girl. There's another case going on with a Bachelor contestant, or he was the Bachelor, and like there were the 26 contestants vying for him. Clayton Eckerd and Lauren Owens. There is, and I don't have her name right now, but that's been a trial that people are kind of paying attention to the news and some of the filings. But one of the people following it, she applied to get a press pass to actually go in and stream the trial herself because no other camera was going to be there for the major hearings. So she went in and she applied and she got the press pass to go and be the camera in the courtroom. And that's recent. That was like 2 days ago. I think it was Tuesday. It might have been Monday. She was down there. She was live streaming it right to her YouTube. She wasn't able to comment on the stream. She's usually the commentator. but she was streaming it so other creators could like restream and do their commentary. So, you know, sometimes it takes someone that's not the news outlets to do something like that. So that's really cool. I wish I knew her name offhand. I think it's also Lauren. I can't remember her last name right now. But yeah, anything like this, guys, stories like this, if you guys want to raise some attention, I'm always happy to talk about them. I appreciate you guys all for being here. HVM, if you're still here, thank you so much for your support. It's always good to see you. EC, Drea, Chillmonger, Peter, live from New York City. Or live from, you leave the O out. Barbara, I know Barbara was in here too. I think she said she was busy. William Alec, I didn't think I saw you come in, but hey to you too. Sorry I missed you. I think I got everyone, because I think Delta Ray might have head out. Michael Sanchez head out. I appreciate you guys all. The Haven, Pam, if you're still here. And you guys all have a good night. Appreciate you so much.